Hey guys, welcome to the Inspired Blueprints channel, where we build homes and buildings in the virtual world of The Sims 4. So I really wanted to build a restaurant this week and something modern because, no offense, but the restaurants in the game they don't cut it for me. I want views, when you go to a restaurant, you're there to relax, maybe celebrate something, get some drinks. And I would love something really scenic to go into my game that is more enjoyable for my Sims to go to. So the first thing I thought of is Sulani, which is obviously the island living pack that comes with, beautiful ocean features, ocean lots, and I wanted to build in the Lani St. Taz neighborhood, which obviously comes with the pack. And here's my reference. What I loved most about my reference is that it's floating, of course, which is the vibe that I went for. That was like the biggest point of inspiration was the fact that it's floating so serenely on the water, and it's super modern and minimal as well, like really open, a lot of glass and clean lines. So it informed a lot of the decisions I made in terms of like the structure of everything and how I wanted the shape overall to look. I started off by making the building float, of course, over the water, and to do this, I basically created a room in the ocean and then put a foundation on the roof. So I had a little bit of trouble with this. Something you may run into is if you don't put the foundation onto the roof, it doesn't just automatically, you'll kind of see it doesn't work. As soon as you try and lower the foundation to get rid of that platform and remove the walls and stuff, you're going to see that it doesn't stay the piece at the top that you want to be able to drag down and manipulate. So you have to add the foundation onto the roof, then of course remove the walls, and then you have a floating platform that you can move up and down, and that's how I created the appearance of it floating on top of the water. I'm not a scientist, don't ask me questions about practicalities. I just know that it looks really cool, and I don't even know the practicalities of my reference. I don't know how they made that happen, but I think it looks really cool. And hey, science, maybe it's possible. So once I created the structure, this is pretty much the final structure, more or less what it ends up looking like. A long walkway that leads over the ocean into the restaurant, and a lot of open areas with balconies where you can see the beautiful views while you're sitting and having your seafood, I imagine. And one thing that I really loved about this build was, keeping it neutral, keeping all of the colors super light, and also taking a lot of colors from the natural environment. So there's a lot of turquoise, a lot of light baby blue colors that I decided to incorporate within my build, and for little pops of color I added some teal and stuff like that. So right now I'm working on the walkway. I wanted the walkway to have some beautiful lights and something to look at as you walk up this long walkway, right? It's meant to be really dramatic and lead you obviously into the restaurant, but we wanted to, give you a sense of what you're about to get when you come in. So lights and plants. I ended up changing these plants though to these cute little fountain balls. I decided to add these strip lights onto the walls that are actually covered to really emphasize not the open space at night, but also, just to give it a little pop. And lots of lights. I really liked these strip lights. They're called the RGB bright strips from University, and they're everywhere. They're on the tops, they're obviously in between these lines, and I thought it added, it highlights the feature a little bit better. It kind of makes it pop, especially at night, with the ocean. And this pack actually made me realize how much I love the spa day pack. This build actually reminded me how much I love the spa day pack, because there are so many useful things that I used used here. Everything from the LED floor strips to the strips that I use on all of the unbroken walls to give that appearance of the wall looking like it's just light. All of that stuff comes from Spa Day. Of course, the walkway with the fountains, the orbs that are emitting water, those are also from Spa Day. So this really made me appreciate the pack and actually how much nice stuff they have in that pack, like really useful stuff that I use quite a lot that goes unappreciated. And when I was writing down the stuff for this video, I was like, oh my gosh, like 90% of this building is actually from Spa Day, so that was really cool. And even this fountain that I'm placing now that becomes the sign is from Spa Day as well. And I used it to create the sign. I figured, you know, it can't just be a sign, it has to be a waterfall sign because it's an ocean view restaurant. Like that is the main, I guess, draw for me, is like the views of the ocean, so it makes sense to incorporate that into the sign. I toggle between day and night mode a lot because, you know, it has to look great at night. If you're going for dinner, like I really wanted it to look gorgeous at night, well lit, and just give you the views. This is what the restaurant ended up looking like, the front, the back, and now we can get to furnishing and buying items for the restaurant. Now we're moving on to furnishing the restaurant, and I decided to start in the kitchen. And the reason I started in the kitchen is because I really like, it's obviously a small build. I'm not used to building things this small, and I needed to make sure that there was enough space for your Sims to walk from the walkway into the restaurant, but that the kitchen is also big enough to be functional. So I'm making minor tweaks to the size here and there, being like, how can I make sure that the chef station and everything is reachable to the chef, just making sure that this main closed room has enough space, and then kind of shifting or making adjustments where I need to throughout the rest of the restaurant. I wanted to make the kitchen super practical, super usable. Obviously, everything is usable. It's important to me that it's functional. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless, right? The main accent in this is the kitchen wall, which I added some nice shelves to, and a lot of functional things like knife holders, like chili jars, stuff that I imagine would be in a restaurant kitchen. And I also really like this industrial looking like counter that kind of blends well with the chef station. I love the chef station with the window. It's called the full disclosure chef station, and it actually adds to the kitchen, seeing it from the balcony as you walk out, and it's practical for the waiters as well to, I guess, reach the customers. So that was why I chose that particular chef station. And I really wanted 2 chef stations because, I don't know, if the max amount of chefs I think you can have in the game is 2, so it makes sense to just have 2. Even if one goes unused, they usually toggle between the 2, and yeah, to make sure that you have enough, I guess, to serve all of these tables. It's quite a few tables too, even though it's actually a really small space. I was able to fit in quite a few tables, and it's really nice to see it all come together. So if you notice, I have 2 walls, I guess, that kind of are enclosed, and I put 2 2-seater tables and then 2 2-seater booths. And I didn't really like the way that the booths look, to be honest. I like the white leather chair, but I couldn't figure out like what colors. The colors aren't really working for me, and the game doesn't really give you a lot of options in terms of booths. You really only have 2 options of these types of chairs. So I was like, you know what, let me create a custom booth. Let me see what I can do. So I took the full disclosure sign and I put it over the top of the booth, so it kind of does look a bit longer, and that light wood that is incorporated throughout the restaurant really added a nice touch. The dark wood was a bit jarring on the booth, so I decided, let me add some light woods, and it ended up working nicely. I put those lines on a wall in between the 2 sections, and it looks like it's now built into the wall. It's like a wall feature, which I really like about it. And then I finished off with some LED strips, which are obviously everywhere, probably use 1,000. I don't know, maybe I should do a count. And I put them in between the lines, and it kind of just has a vibe, a very cozy, intimate vibe. And I like the intimacy of it. There's not a lot of tables clustered together, or at least I tried to make sure that there's an element of privacy throughout the restaurant. And then, so at the bottom of these booths, I also put the Stony Goodness Lab, and this was a debacle. This was like an issue. I couldn't figure out why my booths were not usable, because obviously I test everything before releasing it just to make sure, you know, that you can use it. Otherwise, like I said, it's pointless. But yeah, and they weren't usable. None of these booths were usable, and so I ended up having to change that in the end. I'll actually show you the solution that I came to right at the end. It ended up looking the same aesthetic with the light wood at the bottoms, because you don't want it to be dark wood at the bottom and then light wood at the top. But I was able to kind of come up with an alternative solution for that. Yeah, and I was kind of figuring out the seating area. I have 2 big tables right by the ledge. I don't know what I keep the broken wall, where there's no wall, and you can see over the ocean. I had 2 smaller tables that seat 4, and then 2 larger tables that seat 8. And I know a lot of people say, like a lot of Sims YouTubers who build restaurants say it's kind of pointless to have these large tables. Not for me. I'm a legacy player. I like to build I like to create families that like live on for generations and have kids, and then I play the kids and then they have kids, you know, the whole spiel. So I end up with these really large families, and this is why I love restaurants, and this is why I need restaurants in my game, because like I want to actually have that element of gameplay where you can go out for dinner and catch up, you know. A bit corny, a bit nerdy, but yeah, you know, that's what I like. I like what I like. Yeah, and I really like the idea of having big tables that seat a lot of people for my personal gameplay. I know that when you're owning a restaurant, when you're in the position of like running the restaurant, not a lot of people come with really large groups, you know. It's usually around 4 people max that come and get a table, so sometimes it does feel like, you know, the larger tables are never used if you're actually running the restaurant, if you're looking at it from that point of view. But I like to toggle between my families, so there'll be one person that's running the restaurant and I have that element of gameplay, but I also like to have a nice restaurant that I can go to from the perspective of just going out for dinner, if that makes sense. So yeah, and this is pretty much done. I am now working on the outdoor section of the restaurant, and I really wanted to utilize that balcony. That's probably the space that has the best views. You know, if you're gonna sit at a seafood restaurant, oh my gosh, this is giving me such vibes, like seafood restaurant, right, with fresh seafood, and you have a beautiful ocean view, sitting from a booth where you're surrounded by water and in a booth, right? And the 2 booths on the sides of the balcony are probably, well, there's one for now, but I will add another one that does mirror this corner of the balcony. And it's a booth with a table and a little plant area. It seats 4, so it's a nice family table, but there's also some more cozy, intimate tables with smaller seatings for like dates where you still get beautiful views. And yeah, I really like that it is lowered, like it's lower than the rest of the rest of the platform. And I did this inside as well. If you'll notice, with the other booth I surrounded it with half walls completely, but this booth obviously outside doesn't really make sense because you want to be able to see the ocean. That's like the main thing. So inside it's more about privacy, since you're enclosed by a bunch of tables. I really like the idea of having, like, feeling like you're entering like a private little section, you know. So the fact that it's lowered on the outside still kind of makes it feel private, but with no obstructions to your views, which is probably the best feature about sitting on the balcony outside on a nice summer's day. I also decided to add these glass panels on the floors. They're called Crystal Clear. They're from Island Living, one of my favorite features of Island Living. You know, since this whole thing is elevated and it's sitting above the water, you know, it's nice to see the water below you, and you know, it's just, it gives you the feels. It's really modern and a nice feature to add to the balcony area where you have the ocean all around you and now the ocean below you, which is really cool. And yeah, I'm kind of finishing up with the final touches of the build, kind of just putting more menu, because I realized I haven't actually added any menus. So some nice menus on the wall with like some blue accents, just to give it, you know, that restaurant vibe. And of course the reception area, which I basically just added a counter with that reception table from Dine Out, and then I enclosed it with some half walls and added the same spa day light blue tiles around it, and it kind of blends in with what's behind it, blends in with, you know, the surrounding exterior, and it was a really nice touch. I ended up liking at the end how it looked. I also decided to add these table lanterns from Wedding Stories. It's actually, I don't know if I would like it. You know when you like, you skip over something and you're like, this won't work, this is like not gonna work, but it actually worked. So yeah, and I added a cute touch to each table. And then I began correcting. When I started testing the restaurant, like I said earlier, the booze were not working, and I was brainstorming why it wouldn't work, and I removed like everything, and I was like, can you sit? Okay, what's the issue? And it ended up being the Stony Goodness slab, so I ended up replacing them with these shelves. They're from the base game. They're called I forget what they're called, but they're from the base game, and they're called the Immaculate Shelf. They're immaculate, and they solved my problem. And then the booths were functional, but it still had the same look as the Stony Goodness slab. So I was kind of happy with that. Like, you know, at least it looks the same. I'm happy with that. And then my last final touch was to the sign, which actually is one of my favorite things with the leaves and everything. It looks really good, and I decided to make it double-sided. And yeah, that was the last final touch that I added, and this is what the restaurant ended up looking like. Here's a short walkthrough. Thank you so much for, you know, sticking it out to the end. And please like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. I'd love to bring more to you, and I'd like to get my videos out there and grow my channel. So if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and hitting the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon for the next one. Bye.